Hello and welcome. We have about 1 minute and then we'll get started right on time. Hello, Shalendra, Kristen, Chase, hello. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started right on time. Welcome to today's webinar titled 6 Reasons Why Your Customer Experience Plummets When Your Business Skyrockets, and how to avoid and or fix it. So today you'll be hearing shortly from John DiJulius. He's our Chief Revolution Officer of the DiJulius Group and also best-selling author. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things that I wanted to mention. John will be taking live Q&A after his presentation today. So the Q&A feature is at the bottom, kind of middle of your Zoom screen. So anything that you would like him to dive further into before we end today, go ahead and throw in the Q&A. Anything else that you need assistance with, follow up with, questions, please feel free to put in the chat. I will be monitoring that the entire time we are together to make sure that you have everything you need. And then after today's webinar, I will be sending a follow-up so that you will get a copy of the recording and also a copy of John's slide deck. So just so you know that will be coming in addition to a few other resources from the DiJulius Group. And now I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hello, revolutionaries. So let's start. Nothing ruins a company's customer experience faster than rapid growth. I hate that quote because it's so true. Explosive growth is the one thing every CEO and leader, entrepreneur wants, works for, dreams about. However, if your company isn't ready for it, it can be the worst thing for your organization. Remember the old adage, be careful of what you wish for. It has put many successful companies out of business. Rarely does a company go through rapid growth without having their customer and employee experience suffer significantly. I've personally gone through it, the growing pains in all my businesses. Back when we started our business, our first business 30 years ago, and we were obsessed with hiring. The candidate had to match our values. If they didn't have that service DNA, we would interview 15 to 20 people, for every one person we hired. And we held every employee to the highest standard of the customer experience they delivered. Fast forward 5-10 years later, when our business was exploding and we needed a lot of employees quickly to help handle the demand. And we started compromising on who we were hiring, not to mention making excuses on who we were keeping. And all this led to a rapid decay of our internal culture and decline in our customer experience. I have found out, anytime you compromise your culture for sales, you end up losing the sales in the long term as a result. So back in 2007, Starbucks learned this lesson the hard way, and they were forced to reinvent themselves. Then Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz said, we were growing the company with such speed and aggression that we lost sight of the customer experience. And then Schultz sent the infamous and brutally honest memo to his executive team titled The Commoditization of the Starbucks Experience, which actually leaked out to the public. So I'll show you some of my favorite excerpts from this memo. Over the past 10 years, in order to achieve the growth, development, and scale necessary to grow from less than 1,000 stores to 13,000 stores and beyond, we've had to make a series of decisions that in retrospect have led to the watering down of the Starbucks experience and what some might call the commoditization of the brand. I love his brutal honesty. One of the results, and Howard Schultz continues, one of the results has been the stores that no longer have the soul of the past and reflect a chain of the stores versus the warm feeling of a neighborhood store. Some people even call our stores sterile, cookie cutter, and no longer a reflection of the passion our partners feel about our coffee. And then the final one here is we desperately need to look into the mirror and realize it's time to get back to the core and make the changes necessary to evoke the heritage, the tradition, and the passion that we all have for the true Starbucks experience. So if you Google the commoditization of the Starbucks experience, you can read the whole memo, but those are some of the brutal honesty highlights. So as a result, Starbucks had to close thousands of stores and lay off a significant number of employees, which they call partners. It took Starbucks several years. However, they did in fact reinvent themselves and weathered the storm, but it wasn't easy. So how does a business achieve its number one goal of rapid growth without ending fatally, or at least extremely painfully? Let's not forget, growth for a business is a great thing. It means a business is doing something right. It means more employees are hired, more customers are being served, employees have more career opportunities, leaders and shareholders are benefiting. So it can be a great thing. So let's jump into it. The 6 reasons why your customer experience, any business customer experience, plummets. Number 1, compromise hiring. Number 2, fast tracking new employee training. Number 3, employee turnover increases dramatically. Number 4, customer satisfaction and customer retention drops significantly. Number 5, your systems are not buttoned up and scalable. And number 6, a clash of cultures. So I'm going to get into each one in this webinar and talk about how to avoid it or fix it if you're already there. So number 1, compromise hiring. Right. And I really opened with this. Imagine your company's growing, expanding, needs more employees, a lot more, maybe hundreds more. How picky can you be when you need 400 new employees within the next few months? Locations must be open. Demand for your products and services exploding, right? So the pressure is on to get people hired. This is when most companies start compromising on who they hire. One day you wake up with a bunch of renters and squatters who could care less about the company's vision, mission, values, cultures, and legacy. The 2 biggest mistakes companies make during this time is number 1, they're just filling positions with anyone. And number 2, they're keeping poor performers. So we've all been guilty of it. So how do you fix it or avoid it? Number 1 is, I think of our hiring process as a 30-foot high fence with barbed wire on it. We're not for everyone, nor do we want to be. Everyone you hire contributes to your culture one way or another. So we still got to be stringent about who we hire and who we keep. Hopefully we could be more proactive and not hire someone when we need them yesterday. If we could stay 6 months ahead of that curve, we could be, a lot more selective with that. So one of the best things is making your interview process ungameable. The biggest problem with a typical interview process is that most intelligent candidates can game it, right? Anyone could be on their best behavior for a short time, and most interview questions are predictable. The key is to finding out what a person's true identity is, how they act when they don't know what they're being judged on. The companies that have the best hiring have the best screening process. They're ungameable. So I'll give you some quick examples. And also I'll make sure that Lindsay, I wrote a white paper on this topic, why the 6 reasons why your customer experience plummets, which goes into a lot more detail. I'll make sure that is part of the links that you get with this webinar download. So, we've learned this from the best companies we've worked with. Group interviews are extremely productive and telling. The first round, right? Instead of interviewing, 6 people independently, and it takes you 6 hours, we like to, interview all 6 in 1 hour, and we just ask the candidates random questions. A lot of the questions we aren't as care about the answer as much as the candidate thinks we are. It just gets them talking. Tell us a scenario when you went above and beyond. But the candidate thinks they're being judged on who has the best answer. Okay. What they're really being judged on is what they're doing when the other 5 or 6 or however many people are in there are answering. Are they fidgety? Are they looking at their Apple Watch? Are they, thinking about how they can one up the answer? Or are they looking at the candidate, smiling, laughing when they say something funny? That's what we're looking for. That's the one we want, the best listener. Number 2, fast tracking new employees. I mean, this is a catastrophic mistake. What has always been, unique to your brand, the people that you hire, how well you train them, how well you get them up to your standards of the customer experience. The number one thing CEOs get wrong with customer experience is where service aptitude comes from. Too often CEOs and leaders think that service aptitude is innate. It's common sense, and it's just not. I mean, there's three places service aptitude, all our service aptitude gets shaped in our lives, including your existing generation employees and your future generation employees. First one is previous life experiences, right? So not too many people, most of us didn't grow up staying at 5-star resorts, flying first class and driving a Mercedes-Benz when we turned 16. Yet, all our jobs when we entered the workforce, whether it was in high school, college, or after college, we were expected to give that type of experience. And to our tenants, clients, guests, patients, whatever we may call our customer, whatever that organization called their customer, it's not realistic. The second place service aptitude comes from is previous work experiences. Unless we have a direct pipeline to former Disney, Ritz-Carlton, and Chick-fil-A employees, which none of us do, that means that our employees, work somewhere else that probably wasn't world-class. And so they were trained or not trained, or they were brainwashed not to trust the customer, not to let the customer take advantage of them. So then you hire them, I hire them because they interview great, they're nice, but they're treating our platinum VIP guest client like they're trying to get away with something. So these first two things, we can't control. A leader can't control these first two things. The only thing a leader can control is the third place. And it's what we do with them after we hire them. So it's really important that we have a proper certificate training, and then we certify them on the soft skill, not just the operational skills. Okay. Most companies that all their training is operational technical processes. And very little, if any, soft skill training, right? How to show compassion and empathy, how to have compassion and empathy, how to build an instant rapport, how to make an emotional connection, how to make a brilliant comeback when we drop the ball. So, it's not the employee's responsibility to have high service aptitude. It's the company and leaders to ensure that they receive it. So how to avoid, how to fix it. The onboarding experience, right? After, we've hired them, and this is kind of what I talked about, the amount of technical training and certification versus soft skill training. If you've been around the DiJulius group, our methodology. Make sure that they're learning and being tested on your customer experience action statement, the day in the life of a customer video that so many of our clients make, that you'll see in this presentation. You're never and always non-negotiables. Make sure they get trained on it, they get tested on it, and they get held accountable. Your customer experience cycle, that's the things that should happen at every touch point you come in contact with a customer, which is what to avoid, what are the non-negotiable standards, and what are the above and beyond opportunities. And then the service recovery protocols when we do drop the ball, when something goes wrong. And then another really great piece of this is the employee service aptitude test. The employee service aptitude test is, could be 25 to 50 questions of scenarios that you give employees. And the best companies, they don't give this as a pre-hire tool. Okay. They give it as after a training tool, and they may give it before you go through training, and then after, to see how the training has worked. And, listen, a lot of times, it's multiple choice. A lot of times the new employee will know that C is the best answer. It's obvious. And they'll select C and they'll get C, that question right. But it's a learning opportunity, because they never would have known to do C in the moment tomorrow. But then there are some questions where they don't pick the best answer. And that's a learning opportunity. Lindsay, why did you pick B? Instead of C or D, whatever the right answer is. And Lindsay, a new employee, might say, because at my last job, I would have gotten in trouble. I would have gotten fired for doing C. And so that's a great opportunity saying here, you never get in trouble for something you do. You'd only get in trouble for something you don't do. So an employee service aptitude is a great way to measure if someone's ready to be in your experience. Number 3, your employee turnover increases dramatically, right? The new employees don't have an emotional connection to your brand and culture, and we're not trained well and are doing badly if they're fast tracked. Their self-esteem is low. They're dealing with frustrated customers and coworkers at no fault of their own because they just don't know, right? Every new employee is the dumbest employee we have. If I come to work for you tomorrow, you come to work for me, we'd be, the dumbest employee because we just don't know, anything when our first 90 days. So, a lot of times, in the first 90 days, new employees, leave. Even worse, you're losing long-term tenure employees who are rock stars. And so, it's really important that, I love this quote. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I absolutely love it. And I say it to my boys, my 3 boys. I say it to my, employees, especially at new employee orientation. But I had a leadership epiphany that, really told, I never thought about that. If your son or daughter is not hanging out with the people they should be, okay, undesirables, right? Bad influences. Who do we hold accountable? Them, the son or daughter, that are choosing who to hang out with. But if you think about it, if we allow just anyone to get hired or remain here, and we have toxic work environments and negative people that are bringing the morale down, our employees don't get to choose who they work with. Okay, they don't get to choose their average, their 5. We're choosing for them. And so if we have a rock star, one of 2 things going to happen if we're surrounding them with C players. The rock star hates working with C players. They get the hell out of there. Worse is if they don't, right? They give us the benefit of the doubt, but they'll become the average of the 5. And then we might be complaining about what happened to Lindsay. She used to be a rock star and now she's not. Well, so, that really, I lost some sleep over that when I started realizing that we control the average of the 5 employees our employees are surrounded with. So how to fix that, right? Build a moat around your top talent. Be on a mission to catch people doing something right. 63% of employees who say they're recognized regularly said they would not consider looking for a new job, right? Systematize your leaders catching people doing something right. When I was involved in the salons, my leaders used to send me a spreadsheet quarterly of their direct reports and the last time they caught their team members doing something right. So there was pressure on seeing it and genuinely catching people doing something right. I'm sure you're familiar with Ford. Ford stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. And all our clients use it, as a tool to build a rapport with customers, so it's not as transactional, and they listen, or they collect this information. Are they married? Do they have kids? How old are their kids? What do they do for a living? What do they like to do with their free time and dreams, right? Well, this is a great leadership test. When we do leadership workshops ahead of time, we'll have the leaders in the workshop, their direct reports on a sheet of paper, and we'll hand that out as part of an exercise and have each leader fill out their direct reports forward. And it's an eye opener, right? I mean, how well do you know the Ford of the employees that you work with every day, that you're responsible for? And occupation, that doesn't count because they work for you. So the O needs to be, do you know what your employee wants to be doing in 5 years from now? Right. And that could be with the company. It might not be. And that's okay. but you better know the Ford of the people that work for you, and make sure you learn it. Another big tool that we've never had as leaders up until the pandemic is leading from a distance, right? That's never been a skill set, right? And that's harder. We got to tie employees' role directly to the overall sense of purpose, right? Build relationships through making emotional connections. That's harder today with the virtual world and work from home. So if you're not seeing people at, the office or at, the location, you got to make sure you're creating structured one-on-one check-ins, right? To build emotional capital. These aren't, agendas. They have to be just check-ins, 5-15 minutes with your direct reports, so you can build an emotional connection, see how they're really doing, replicate the Keurig conversations, and humanize yourself by showing your own vulnerability about if they're going through something, you can relate to that. All right, number 4, customer satisfaction and customer retention drops significantly. Well, due to the 3 previous organizations' great reputation prior to the rapid growth, which has caused the rapid growth, right? Which is kind of ironic. Existing and new customers have high expectations. However, because the influx of poorly trained employees, your customer experience becomes extremely inconsistent. What we call is you got employee roulette. Worse than ever, when the level of your customer experience is determined by which employee a customer gets. That's employee roulette, right? VIP customers no longer feel like a VIP. There's a lack of empathy for when customers are inconvenienced and it's not made right. The company's customer experience turns into a liability instead of your strongest competitive advantage. So how do you fix it? Well, first, do you know who your ideal customer is? I always like to say, when people ask me, I want a Tesla driving, Lululemon wearing, Peloton riding, Starbucks drinking, Apple using customer. Well, do we know what attracts them, that turns them on, that makes them become a loyal customers? These types of customers, these types of customers care less about price and more about finding an emotional affirmation, a compelling experience that makes them feel better about themselves, which creates an emotional connection to the brand, which makes price irrelevant. Love that, right? Making price irrelevant doesn't mean you can charge any price and still keep customers or get customers. Here's what making price irrelevant means. Based on the experience your brand consistently delivers, your customers have no idea what your competition charges. So think about that, right? Based on what the experience your brand consistently delivers. That goes back to employee roulette. Every touch point, who I get when I call support or the call center or checked in, or my accountant, my consultant, my hairdresser, whatever it is, everyone gives me an unbelievable experience. And now I'm not price checking you, right? So I love to tell this story. 20 some years ago, at John Roberts Spa, my first business that we started 30 years ago, one of our competitors put this sign in their window, that was like 4 or 5 doors down from one of our salons, right? We do $10 haircuts, and our staff freaked out, and, our prices are we do $100 haircuts, right? So our staff, thought they were going to run us out of business, and we had to, offer discounts and price match. And I said, no, we don't play those games. Let's focus on the experience. Let's make that be brilliant at the basics and raise the level of experience. And we put this sign in our window that said, we fix $10 haircuts. So we choose not to compete in price wars. We compete in experience wars, because there's a lot less competition and they don't know how to do it as well as we do. So, ask yourself, are your customers a coupon away, an incentive away, a discount away from leaving you? It's really important. Every one of your customer facing employees are getting asked how much they charge for something. And then, today, and not by every customer, but they're getting this regularly. And then they say, well, I can get it somewhere else for less. And it's what we say next It's what your employees say next, which is critical, right? And so we got to make sure we articulate that response, not shrink and say, all right, well, I'll give you 10% off, or I'll throw in free shipping, or no, that's shrinking. We have to be able to articulate why we charge a premium price, right? So they walk away saying, I can't afford to go elsewhere, right? Because the cheaper you go, in a lot of cases, the more it's going to cost you. So we have to make sure, we train our staff on how we want that answered. And the best thing, right, for your employees is a day in the life of a customer, creating a short video of what's going on in the customer's life. So we have more empathy and compassion. All our clients create a day in the life of their client, in the B2B world, B2C, manufacturing, whatever it is. I'm going to show you the day in the life of a John Roberts customer, just so you kind of see, if you've never seen one, an example of it.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again.
All right. So a day in the life of your customer helps, bring more compassion and empathy to each employee. It's a great training tool. Not only show it at orientation, but show it constantly. It just makes us realize not to transactionalize who we're dealing with, be present, and understand that our expertise plays a major role in our customers and clients' day. All right. Number 5. Your systems are not buttoned up and scalable, right? Your long-term employees typically know what you do and how you do it because they worked with the CEO entrepreneur back in the day, right? They drank the Kool-Aid. They continued the obsession with doing it the right way. However, as each generation of employees start, all that information is stored in the original founding employees' brains, and new employees don't have the benefit of working in the trenches with the founder, the visionary. And not only is there a lack of documented and trainable non-negotiable standards for every customer's touch point, but there's no ability to certify and measure that every employee knows it and how it's executed consistently. So how do you fix it? Hopefully you've created a customer experience cycle, and what that looks like. And we're going to use our restaurant here because it's the easiest, most universal experience that we all know of. It's looking at every touch point right? So a restaurant, you call up and make reservations. You walk in and get greeted by the hostess. She seats you. Then you have the server come and greet you and order, and then the meal presentation, and then the table visit stands for like a manager stopping by, seeing if you're happy, and then you deliver the check and the goodbye. So just looking at an experience like that, we, all our customers, and you can do this to all our clients, break each one of those stages down, and what could go wrong? What is our industry known for of doing wrong at this stage that we don't want to be guilty of? What's our operational standards that we need to do every time? Right, that needs to be done. But now we want to add experiential standards, because operational standards aren't memorable. They're only memorable when they're not done. But if the order is correct, if you come in for 7 o'clock reservations, and you check in and the restaurant has you, that's not memorable. You expected that. The only time that's memorable is when you check in for the 7 o'clock reservations and they don't have you, or they have you tomorrow night. That's when an operational standard is unmemorable. It's critically important, but it's not memorable. That's why we want to add the experiential standards, something that we asked you on the phone if you were celebrating anything, and you said, yes, our anniversary, a promotion. And that's when we add that. And then the last part is the above and beyond opportunity. So that's what the workshop does, is breaks it into 4. But when it's done after the workshop, after we've baked the experience, we combine the 2 middle one, the operational and the experiential, just becomes non-negotiable standard. Employees who are getting trained don't need to understand if it's operational or experiential. They just need to understand it's non-negotiable. They have to do it. So when the employees get trained, the first column, service defects, don't do this. Okay. Do not be guilty of doing this. The middle one is you got to do this. And then the third one, the above and beyond, is look for these opportunities. It's typically low hanging fruit, doesn't take a lot of time, but you just need to be aware. Okay. And now finally, number 6, a clash of cultures. Often a key reason for a company's growth is that they're acquiring competitions in their competitors in their industry. That's great, right? There's an enormous upside for the increase in market share, top level revenue, and the synergies of business operations. However, the primary drawback when this happens is you're merging several different company cultures with yours. And this is probably the hardest of all 6 obstacles to overcome. Too often, culture immersion takes a back seat and is never addressed. Typically, a parent company acquire other companies, just skip the first 5. Which is why you plummet. So how do you fix this, right? You got to make sure there's an onboarding experience for the new company. Even though they've been doing, their jobs for years, they still have to be an onboarding to your culture, values, and all that. So, put them through orientation or reorientation. There's so many great, just making sure they understand where your brand came from, the parent company, why you opened, what wrong were you writing when you started your business 10, 15, 30 years ago, and how you're different, and what the mission and the purpose and the core values really mean. And, doing all that through a new employee orientation. And again, technically they may not be new employees, but they're new employees to the culture. So they have to be baptized into your way. And there's just different, great best practices of putting them through orientation with existing employees that have been with the company for a while, so they can help share and storytell and become, kind of big brother and getting them acclimated, sound bites to explain their new job. That really may be for a new employee, but also making sure we're touching base every 15, 30, 60, and 90 days with new employees and new employees that we've acquired. It's really, really important to do this. There's so many things can get lost here. And if we're just, if you're just acquiring companies and letting them operate as is, that's, now all of a sudden, especially if you're rebranding them, your brand, That's where it goes from employee roulette to location roulette, right? And, I've always, been a fan, but I went to this location and I really don't care if it's, an acquired location or it came from organic growth. All I know is it's not what I'm used to. All right. So that, wraps it up. Trust me, every business we work with, wants to have explosive growth and bust out at the seams. I just don't want them to do it at their peril. When done correctly and prepared for growth, growth is everything we hope it to be. As leaders, you cannot succumb to the growth trap. You can't compromise your higher training and the customer experience that's disrupted your industry and ignited your growth originally. All right. I'm going to pass it back to Lindsay for some questions.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to allow a couple more minutes for questions to come in. So I'm just going to go over a few things. If you weren't aware already, we have the Customer Service Revolution Annual Conference coming up shortly in just a couple months. It's October 11th and 12th, held in downtown Cleveland. Our speaker lineup is here. We have some amazing individuals taking the stage this year. For more information and to register, you can go to customerservicerevolution.com. And if you have any individual or specific questions in regards to the conference, you can reach out to me as well. And then I also wanted to mention our Customer Experience Executive Academy. So this is an academy typically for Chief Experience Officer type roles where they come in. It's a year-long academy where they come in and are trained by our TDG, the DiJulius Group consultants, on our entire methodology. We break everything down for them. We help them learn and understand the content so they can take it back to their respective companies and do the workshops, do the work, and put everything together while they have the full support of the DiJulius Group. Any questions in regards to the academy, you can reach out to Claudia, and her direct email is claudia@thedijuliusgroup.com. And I will include information about the conference and our academy in the follow-up. So I'll have all of the contact details there for you as well. Okay, so first question, John. When the ball is dropped by a company, how do they go about dealing with the angry or frustrated customer but also staying true to their core values? So how do they jump?
Yeah, that's a great question. Listen, a lot of times, our customers appear to be irrational, like, making, blowing what we think is a small issue out of proportion. And if you think about it, I know I've done that as a customer, right? And, when I've left something, a situation where, maybe I'm driving home and I realized maybe I overreacted and I didn't need to take it out the way I did on that customer facing employee. I start to realize while I didn't like what happened, I didn't like the way maybe she was handling it, and maybe she was just the messenger and her hands were tied. The reason why I was, maybe, overreacted wasn't that was the tipping point in my day or week. And I just had a lot of stuff going on. Right. So we just have to understand, don't take it personal, but make it personal. Right. And so, we want to make sure that, one of the things that we create in our zero risk workshop is a metaphor of training employees how they should handle when something goes wrong. So an example is LAST. Okay. Chick-fil-A uses the LAST method, and that LAST, and it's listen, apologize, solve, and thank. Right? Listen, apologize, solve, and thank. So and then, obviously you got to train everyone what the listening looks like, what the apology looks like, what the solve. And apology doesn't even mean, right? Sometimes it's not our fault. Right? We apologize for the inconvenience, or we apologize for the miscommunication. So it's not necessarily accepting full responsibility, but we don't want to be defensive. We want to give the customer the benefit of the doubt and not, punish 98% of the customers for what we think 2% are trying to get away with. I'd rather get taken advantage of, 2% of the time for what I'll gain with the 98, people, percentage of customers that I can't believe we handled it that way.
Perfect. All right, John, I think that's actually all of our questions. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, for more information about the DiJulius Group, Customer Service Revolution, our CX Academy, Claudia's email is right there. It's claudia@thedijuliusgroup.com. I will be sending a follow-up with video, PDF of the slides and more resources from the DiJulius Group. And everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, John. Bye, guys.